Hello from London. Americans, my fellow countrymen and women, this video is for you. I am a New Yorker that has lived in London for 10 years, and I often see Americans making certain mistakes when they come to London, whether it's behavioral or cultural. And that's completely fine, but let me tell you about those mistakes and how to avoid them so you can not only put your best foot forward when you come here, but you also just have a really great time. So let's hop into it. And also don't worry if you make these mistakes anyway, because Lord knows I definitely made them the first time I came to London, and look at me now. So let's go. Okay, let's talk about tipping culture. First off, in the UK, no one's ever gonna turn down or be offended by extra money, so even if you get this wrong, it's not a big deal. But when you're in restaurants, it works a bit different here. The waitstaff are paid more than the waitstaff back in the US are, so they're not relying solely on tips like you would expect back in the States. But what you'll find is at most restaurants in London, there will be an optional service charge added to your bill automatically. It's usually around 12.5%, and that is all you need to pay for service. Unless you've had bad service, then you can ask them to remove that and pay nothing, which is fine. If you get a bill and the service charge wasn't added, then you'll want to add 10 to 15%, either paying by cash, or you can ask them to add it to the charge that's going to be added to your card. Now, for bars and pubs, if you go up to the bar and you order yourself, tip is not really ever expected. However, you're always welcome to leave £1 or add a little bit extra to your card charge. No one's gonna say no to that. And if you get table service at a bar or a pub, you'll probably see that optional service charge added again. If not, same rule applies as in restaurants. You'll wanna leave 10 to 15% by cash or on your card. Number 2, small talk. Now, one of the best traits that Americans have, in my opinion, is that we are super friendly and tend to talk to anyone, which is so nice and great when you're traveling. But you should know that in London, Londoners generally will keep to themselves more, and they're not quite as open to small talk as you might be used to back in the US. So, for example, you probably won't strike up a conversation with somebody on the tube or on the bus. People will generally have their earphones or headphones in and keep to themselves and stick to their own thing. However, that does not mean that Londoners are not friendly, and especially if you need help, if you get lost or you're not sure which tube line you need to take, if you ask somebody, usually they are very willing to help you as much as they can. Also, a lot of what I just said goes out the window if you're at the pub and a Londoner's had quite a few drinks and they're buzzing. Of course, everyone gets a lot more friendly and a lot more chatty. So go to a pub if you want to talk to people more, I guess. Also, it's customary for people to say here, how are you? Or you okay? They're not actually asking if you're okay and if something's wrong. It just means, how are you doing? And even if you're not doing well, usually they want you to just say, yeah, I'm good, thanks, how are you? And don't want to hear your whole life story. So keep that in mind. Speaking loudly in public. There's something about our American accents and voices that it feels like when we speak, it can be heard a mile away. I don't know what it is that makes it feel like that. But you might notice that Londoners, and actually around the rest of Europe, that people tend to speak a bit quieter than what we're used to back in the US. And you can kind of point out an American in a crowd because you can hear them before you can see them. Something I have continued to have to work on. I still can speak quite loudly, so I've had to train myself. However, just be conscious of how loud you're speaking when you're in a quiet area or you're at a restaurant, just so you're not disturbing anyone. And of course, this all goes out the window, as mentioned before, when everyone's had a few drinks and we're all just really loud and it actually doesn't even matter. Not taking public transport. I know that a lot of Americans have never taken public transport before or are not used to it, and that's completely fine. But in this city, we thrive off of it. The majority of Londoners and tourists will take public transport to get around the city and maybe the occasional taxi. But don't be afraid of the system, even if you've never taken public transport before. It's actually pretty easy to get used to once you've done it a few times, I promise. And never rent a car when in London. First off, you pay £15 a day to even drive that car around central London. You won't find parking, and if you do, it'll be expensive. You're gonna get stuck in traffic. It is definitely not worth the hassle. Just take public transportation and taxis when you need to. By the way, I get that it is really hard and overwhelming to try to plan your own itinerary for a massive city like London, and if you've never been here before, so you're not familiar with it at all. That's why we made our London itineraries. We use our expert knowledge to make sure that you make the most of your time while you're here. You'll get to see so much of London while also saving yourself weeks of time that you would have spent doing the research yourself. So if you want one of our ready-made London itineraries so that your trip is done and dusted for you, click the link down in the description box. And then let's get back to the video. Next up, ordering drinks at pubs and restaurants. There's a couple things I want to tell you. First off, if you want water, usually the server will ask you, do you want still or sparkling? Those are both bottled options that you will pay for. If you want to get those, that's completely fine. Or if you want just tap water, which generally is free, you can just say, just tap's fine, even if they haven't presented it as an option. You can also ask for tap water for free at basically any bar, pub, restaurant. It's very easy to get, and sometimes with a little bit of ice, sometimes not. Also, you should come here fully expecting to not get as much ice in your drinks as you would back in the US, but that's okay, because it's actually better for you to not drink really, really cold drinks. So there you go. Also, you should know that here in the UK, if you order a cider, it's not like the non-alcoholic ciders that you would usually get back at home. Here is generally alcoholic, so if you order a cider for your child, your server is gonna look at you very funny. So keep that in mind, but also try cider, it's great here. And finally, the drinking age here in the UK is 18, and then it's actually 16 if the kid is with a guardian and there is a meal being ordered, so have fun with that. I definitely took advantage when I came here when I was 20 years old, so. Not knowing how to use the plugs here in the UK. Okay, the plugs here are obviously different from what we see back in the US. They're also different from the rest of Europe. They're actually 3-pronged, which you can see what it looks like here. So you will need an adapter to be able to plug your dual voltage appliances into the wall here. Now, if you plug something into the wall with an adapter and you notice that it's not turning on, you might have to flip the little switch that is next to each plug. That is a safety feature because the voltage here is actually double what it is in the US. So it's easy to switch on and off if you need to. So if something's not working, just toggle the little switch and it will turn it on. Don't ask me which way means that it's on and which way means that it's off. 10 years on and I still don't know. I just wiggle it until something happens. Listen, I'm very happy that we have finally shed this incorrect assumption that the food in London here is bad. It's actually world class here. And if you want to try British food when you're in town, of course, I think that's a great idea. However, London is known for having the most amazing multicultural culinary scene, so make sure you are taking advantage of that, especially because you can try food from countries that you might never get to visit in your lifetime. So make sure you are branching out, trying new things, and trying all different types of cuisines while you're here. Oh yeah, we're sitting in front of Dishoom for a reason. So this is a really good modern Indian restaurant. We have tons of great Indian here. There's good Sri Lankan, there's good Vietnamese. I mean, truly any cuisine that you could ever want to try, we have a restaurant here that will serve it and that will serve it well. Americans, you are going to have such a good time when you come to London. And if you want more tips for your trip, make sure you watch one of our hundreds of other videos by clicking one of the boxes popping up around me.